Okay. In the previous session, we discussed 6 stages of caste model, and the 6 stages which he talks about are identity confusion, identity comparison, identity tolerance, identity acceptance, identity pride, and identity synthesis. Now, as far as these 6 stages are concerned, all these 6 stages are relevant to lesbian and gay community members. Now, then there is a question which arises about bisexuals, because when we talk about LGBTQIA, so that B stands for bisexuals. So there is a model which was proposed in 1994, and the model was proposed by Weinberg. Now, in this particular model, he has proposed 4 broad stages of bisexual identity development. And you will find a lot of similarities between Weinberg's model and Kaas' model. It's because both the models actually talk about identity development. And in both the models, there is a stage framework. So there is a specific framework, and it has stages. So in Weinberg's model, we have 4 stages, and in Kaas' model, we have 6 stages. And this identity development model leads from one stage to another, and the person is able to move to the next stage only when he successfully completes the previous stage. So there is a systematic progress in terms of identity development is concerned. Now, Weinberg states that there are 4 stages, and the first stage is that of initial confusion. Now, I'm sure that you all must have guessed the meaning of this particular stage, that is initial confusion, and I'm sure that the guess would be correct. Initial confusion is related to the individual experiences, and in this particular confusion, in this particular stage, the person is attracted towards both genders, and he is confused, and he asks a question about his or her heterosexual identity. So there is tremendous confusion in the mind of the person. It's because he is not attracted only towards the opposite sex. He is attracted to both the genders. So it can be a girl who is attracted not only to a boy, but she is also attracted towards another girl. Same is the case with the boy as well. So there is initial confusion in the mind of the person. And once this confusion is cleared in his or her own mind, the person moves to the second stage. And the second stage is that of finding and applying the label to one's self. And there is confusion in the first stage, and the confusion is whether I am bisexual or heterosexual. So that confusion is prominent in the mind of a person. But once he or she reaches in the second stage, the individual discovers that there is a discovery that sex with both genders is pleasurable. So, the person who has this kind of confusion, who is not only attracted towards his or her own gender, but also the opposite gender, enjoys sexual intercourse with both the genders. And the person realizes that it's pleasurable, and he labels himself or herself as bisexual. So that is the second stage of Weinberg's model. And remember, this particular model is meant for bisexual identity development. Then we move to the third stage, which is about settling into the identity. So once the person has identified himself as a bisexual, the person wants to settle and wants to accept his identity openly. And in this particular stage, the person has completed the labeling process, because he or she, himself or herself, call as bisexual, and now the individual wants social support, that the person wants that this identity should be supported by the society. So that is the third stage of bisexual identity development. And in the fourth stage, it's called as continued uncertainty. Now, as the title suggests, continued uncertainty, it is related to the individual who experiences doubts, at the same time lack of social validation. So that is, there is uncertainty whether the society has accepted him as bisexual or not. So that uncertainty remains with the person. Now, it's very difficult, actually. Somebody who is bisexual, he has to face many problems, because in the initial period, that is before 1990s, that is bisexuals try to identify themselves either as lesbian or gay. And they couldn't identify themselves into the category of heterosexual identity, because they were attracted towards same gender individuals. And this model was proposed in 1994, and this model really helped bisexuals to identify themselves and accept their own identity. So this is a four-stage model which has been proposed by Weinberg in 1994. And the last stage is again that of continued uncertainty, because the person doesn't know what might happen to him in future, and that's why it is titled as continued uncertainty. So this is about the model which was proposed by Weinberg for bisexual development model. I hope this model is clear to all of you. And let's move further, which is about a model which is of Anthony D'Ogili. He proposed a lifespan approach of sexual identity development. So, he calls this as an approach, and he calls it as a lifespan approach. Now, this is because these community members have been fighting for their rights. And the situation started changing when scholars started writing about these community members. And as we discussed in the first session, the things changed drastically after 1990s. Now, if you look at this particular model, which is proposed by D'Ogili, it was proposed in 1994. So it's almost 26 years ago from now. So the situation was totally different at that time. And he talked about this lifespan approach, where he focused upon 6 interactive processes. And these 6 interactive processes will navigate gay, lesbian, and bisexual people to come out of the process and identify themselves. This particular model looks at identity as a social construction, which is based on the experiences of an individual within his or her environment. And he has proposed 6 processes as under. Now, the first process, or the first stage, is that of exiting a heterosexual identity. I'm typing in the chat box. Exiting the heterosexual identity. Now, I have a question to all of you. What do you understand by this particular stage? Any one of you can respond.
Because the way everyone is socialized, the media and everything tells us that each and everyone is heterosexual. So I think the first step to get out of this identification is to exit the heterosexual identity.
Yeah, very good, Navya. So you're absolutely correct. And in this particular stage, individuals begin to recognize that their feelings and attractions are not heterosexual, and they may begin to disclose to others that they are gay, lesbian, or bisexual. So, in this particular stage, they have identified themselves as either gay, lesbian, or bisexual, and they may begin to disclose that they belong to this particular community. Now, I'll go back to the model which was proposed by Cass, and he talks about the 6 stages, and the last stage is that of identity synthesis. So Cass model is a primary model, and D. Ogilvy's model is actually an extension of Cass model, because Anthony Diogeli is not talking about identity confusion or identity acceptance or identity pride. He's not talking about all these details. The first stage itself is that exiting a heterosexual identity. So remember the model of Cass, which ends with identity synthesis. So identity synthesis means the person synthesize with the identity. And here, D. Ogilvy's model starts with exiting a heterosexual identity. So they have accepted that they belong to this particular community, and they may disclose, means there is a possibility they may not disclose as well, but they may disclose that they are LGBT. And this stage is also a period of questioning and self-discovery. So a person keeps asking questions, different questions, and tries to discover oneself. So that is the first stage of this particular model. And then we move to the second stage, which is developing a personal lesbian, gay, or bisexual identity. And in this particular stage, okay, let me ask you a question. If I say the second stage is developing a personal lesbian, gay, bisexual identity, let me type it in the chat box. So this is the second stage of D. Ogilvy's model. Now, Dilisha, will you please talk about this?
Yes, sir. So I think developing a personal lesbian, gay, or bisexual identity is the sort of stage where you have moved away from the fact that you are not a heterosexual person. So you identify as either a lesbian or a gay or a bisexual person, and at this stage, you have accepted that you are either LG or B, and you identify in that manner.
Absolutely. So the first stage is you exit, and you may or may not disclose. But in the second stage, you are developing a personal LGBT identity. And what happens in this stage? Individuals challenge internalized myths. There are many myths which we talk about. because they have to undergo many crises when they identify themselves as LGB. But in this particular stage, what happens, that is, they come in contact with others, those who identify themselves as non-heterosexual. And all these individuals will come together and they all will learn to develop a LGBT identity. So they become part of LGBT community now. That is because they come in contact with others, those who are non-heterosexual, and they completely identify themselves as non-heterosexual. This particular process is often accomplished through a relationship with others, those who have already navigated the process. So those who have already gone through these processes, these newcomers, those who have exited their heterosexual identity, establish a relationship with the previous batch, and there is a relationship which is developed between two. So that is the second stage all about. Then we move to the third stage, which is actually an extension of the second stage itself. And this is the third stage, developing a LGBT social identity. Now, in this particular stage, the word social is added. So in the previous stage, it's only that you develop LGBT identity, but in the third stage, you develop your social identity. So that is what is different from the second stage. And in this particular stage, individuals create a network of support from people who both know and support their sexual orientation. So now, in the third stage, they expect support not only from the community members, but also from other people, those who know about their sexual orientation. So this is gaining support from the society. And society includes those who belong to that particular community, that is LGBT. At the same time, others, those who are open-minded and accept that LGBT community members have different sexual orientation. So this is the third stage. We move to fourth stage. The fourth stage is that of becoming a lesbian, gay, or bisexual offspring. Now, what do you understand by this? Okay, this many. Okay, Karuna, would you like to talk about it?
Yes, sir. Sir,
Yeah.
I think this is very courageous stage because he or she has to tell her parents that he or she belongs to LGBT community, which is very courageous because uh, one our parents can't accept this truth very in easy manner. So I think this is the stage where a person tell his or her parent that they belong to this particular community.
Absolutely correct, Karuna. So, it requires tremendous courage because, if you don't dare, you won't be able to inform your own identity to your parents. Otherwise, if what happens, when uh, if you fail to disclose your identity, then your parents would be under the false impression and they might start searching for a bride or groom, depending on the gender. So if it's a girl, they might search a boy for marriage or vice versa. So it is very courageous stage, as stated by Karuna, that the individuals disclose their identity to their parents and they also redefine their relationship with them in light of their identity. So this is what happens when we enter into the fourth stage. And it's actually most of the time uh, a shock to many parents because they are not mentally prepared in the first place to accept the identity of their child either as LG or B. But it is very much essential that we need to disclose to our parents about our own identity. And if a member who is LGB informs their parents, there is a shift or there is a redefining of their relationship. So the parents uh, in the beginning might not accept the identity immediately. There would be tussle between the child and parents, and it might happen that the entire relationship is hampered. But that completely depends on how and to what extent the parents are open-minded. So that is the fourth stage of this particular model. And then we move to the fifth stage, and that is developing a LGB intimacy status. So, this many, would you like to talk about this?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Yeah.
I think inside the community they are having friendships and understanding among themselves. So I think that is the meaning. That is what I get from this.
Absolutely. This Mini, you are absolutely correct. I'm very happy that you all students are really studious and all your guessworks are right. So developing a lesbian, gay, or bisexual intimacy status in this particular stage, uh, the individuals learn to form intimate relationships with others in light of their sexual identity. So it's either gay, lesbian, or bisexual. So there is intimacy which is developed between uh, two gays, two lesbians, and two bisexual members. Now, again, it becomes very difficult in this particular stage because you have pressure of your parents as well, because in the previous stage you have already informed about your status to them and they become extra cautious, and there might be verbal fights between parents and offsprings. There is possibility, but you need to come out of it and you need to develop the fifth process, which is of intimacy status, because it's actually natural desire of this LGBT community. The way a heterosexual person desires to have physical relationship with the opposite sex or opposite gender, same rule applies to homosexual people as well, because they also desire to have physical relationship with the same gender. So this is the fifth stage, and we have the sixth stage, and this particular stage is actually helpful to other members as well, and it's titled as entering a lesbian, gay, or bisexual community. So if you look at, there are words developing, then becoming, again developing, but now here you are entering into LGBT community. Now in this particular stage, it's the final stage. It comprises of individuals, those who have become committed to social as well as political action. So these once you enter into the sixth stage, you are very active in society and you also become active politically also, and you start fighting for your own rights, and you not only fight for your own rights, you also fight for the rights of other community members. So those who are at different stages according to this or previous model. So you also start fighting for their rights, and actually you become a support. Once you are into the sixth stage, you become a support for others. So you play a role of a support system. So these are the six stages of D'Orgelid's model. Now remember, D'Orgelid proposed these six processes, and all these processes are dynamic. I hope you agree with me the processes which are proposed by de Ogilvy are dynamic. It is because there is possibility. Now, what happens in the previous model, which was proposed in 1979? So it took almost 15 years to have a new model, which is dynamic in nature. So in the previous stage, the person in the previous model, the person has to move from one stage to another in a linear manner, which is not the case with de Ogilvy, because there is possibility that the individual might skip or might neglect one of the processes or one of the stages for various reasons. Now, there is a possibility, let's take an example of the fourth stage, that becoming LGB offspring. In this particular stage, you disclose your identity to your parents. And remember, if you are a college going student and you know that you belong to LGBT community, and if you disclose your identity to your parents, you have fear in your mind that they might cut off your financial support. Having this fear in your mind, you don't follow stage number 4. That is from stage number 3, that is developing a social identity. You directly move to the 5th stage, which is of developing intimacy status, because you have fear that your parents might not support you financially if you disclose your identity. Another thing is, you might not disclose your identity to all. You might disclose it only to some people on campus. You might wait for the right opportunity to disclose, or you won't disclose at all. So the difference or the strength of de Ogilvy's model is that it lists out the processes, but it does not limit you to follow all the processes one after another in a linear manner. That you can skip one of the processes and proceed further. And that's why, de Ogilvy's model is considered as a dynamic model for the journey of an individual. So this is the basic difference which is between caste model and the model of de Ogilvy. I hope both the models, apart from the third model of bisexual community, is clear to you all.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the second model was that of Weinberg. So All these three models are to you. Okay, so thank you for attending this particular session. I'm going to stop the recording now.